Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Today, we're going to be speaking about an interesting topic. It's on the series, the 10 dysfunctions or the 10 behaviors of highly ineffective people. And we're going to be talking about emotional control. This is the third behavior. Emotional control means the emotion we're going to be talking about emotional control, but the problem is emotional immaturity. That's the third misbehavior of dysfunctional people. So we're going to be talking about today. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya. Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Vacharine Nirvisesa Sanyavari Paschati. Let me exactly read what I've written here, because I did not bring it up. And Sundari Radha, when she comes, she's going to bring up the exact words so you can read it. But I want to read this to you. Today we're discussing the third. The 10 habits of highly ineffective people. The third one we're discussing today is you maintain the emotional maturity of a child. Sundari Radha, can you put that up? Yeah, you maintain the emotional immaturity of a 10-year-old. So I want to have, just for a minute, we'll have a little kirtan. We'll wait for people to come. I keep telling people, because this class, when we started at 5. I always have this 5 in my head. I keep telling everybody it's going to start at 5, when in fact it starts at 6. Hare Krishna, Nadia. It's going to start at 6. I keep telling people 5. So, yes. Hare Krishna. I am going to send an email to Radha Priya to make this official. If ever I say 5, it's not. I got 5 in my head. It's always at 6, even if I say it's at 5. So here, I'm sending a letter to a disciple. It says, "Don't listen to me when I say 5." So sometimes you're allowed not to listen to your guru when your guru tells you not to listen to him. Hare Krishna. Okay. So let's have a little kirtan. And I'll get my guitar. It was originally at 5, yeah. I'm going to get my guitar. We'll have kirtan. And we'll wait for more people to come. Anyway, it's a good time in India, right? This time, what time is it in India, DT? It's kind of early, no? Yeah, it must be quite early. Maybe it's not a good time in India. Okay, I'm doing lots of classes every day. And lots of people are doing lots of classes. And my daughter's listening to classes and she says, there's so many classes to listen to. So there's competition out there. So to get your attention and keep you, I have to entertain you as well. Anyway. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Balaba Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Balaba Girivaradhari Jasodanandana Bhaja Janaranjana Shoranandana Bhaja Janaranjana Shoranandana Bhaja Janaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari. This is Prabhupada said this is a meditation on Vrindavan. So let's try to go to Vrindavan now. Let's meditate on Vrindavan. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jasodanandana Bhaja Janaranjana Shoranandana Bhaja Janaranjana Shoranandana Bhaja Janaranjana Shoranandana Bhaja Janaranjana Jamunatira Manachari Jamunatira Manachari Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Sri Radha Madhava ki jai. Go Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. Hare Krishna. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutare Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Shamaniti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvise Sasandhivari Paschatidastani. So today's class is an interesting subject. If you go back up, just go back up to the beginning, and you will see the name Sundari Radha twice. So go to the top, and I want to read what she said here. This is the topic of today's class. This is the third in a series of 10 of what I call the actions, behaviors, attitudes of ineffective people, and this is based on my own experience of either making these mistakes or seeing other people make these mistakes, or both. And so then you might say, well, how is it that you could have made one or more of these mistakes and advanced in Krishna consciousness? And the answer is because you correct them. You make them, but you correct them. Excuse me, I'm going to plug in my phone here. You make the mistakes, but you correct them. So to become Krishna conscious doesn't mean you're perfect, but it means you're always working on becoming perfect. And the idea, if a devotee admits his imperfection, but you respect that devotee, and you see, and you see that devotee's advanced, then rather than become confused about it, but you appreciate that, well, he, like myself, went through difficulties, faced difficulties, but he didn't give in to those difficulties. So that's how to see it. And also you should think that when you see an advanced devotee, never think they didn't have difficulties, never think they didn't do ineffective things or dysfunctional things now and then, or maybe even for a long time. But they understood it, they admitted it, they worked on it, and they became better. So it's not like anyone should become hopeless if they see, oh yes, well, every one of these behaviors that you're talking about in this course, I do. That's good if you recognize you do them, as long as you do something about them. And that's the examples we get of acharyas. So sometimes the acharyas will play the part of conditioned souls, like in the example of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He did many things which made him appear to be a conditioned soul, but we understand that he was not a conditioned soul, but he played that role. And that was, the idea was, well, you could relate to him, you could relate to what he did, and then you get the faith. You think, well, if he did those things and he's now Krishna conscious, I can do those things and I could be Krishna conscious. And Srila Prabhupada never advertised himself as, we would say, oh, Prabhupada, you came from the spiritual world and you're always perfect. But Prabhupada may have referred to that here or there, but generally he portrayed himself more as ordinary. You might say it's his humility. That's true also. But he didn't want us to think that he was special and we could never achieve his level of Krishna consciousness. In fact, he even said, I pray that my disciples will become more advanced. And not that we would ever think we could become more advanced, but it's encouraging for us to know that Prabhupada felt we could achieve his level. There were times when Prabhupada said, you should be doing what I'm doing. You should be on my level. He said, how can we be on Prabhupada's level? But he tried to show us that, no, I'm not special. If you follow Krishna consciousness, you can overcome whatever it is that's blocking you, and you can come to a very high level of Krishna consciousness. So today we're talking about emotional maturity. Another way of saying that is about managing emotions. And I know this does not, at first glance, sound exactly like a Krishna conscious topic. It sounds like what we refer to today, what is referred to today as emotional intelligence. It's a very popular concept. It entered the corporate world. It became popular there. And so it might sound at first glance like, well, maybe I read a book on emotional intelligence and today I'm teaching a class on emotional intelligence. I've actually read excerpts here and there of books on emotional intelligence. I never made study of it. I've made a study of it in life, and I've made a study of it through our own philosophy. So I want to explain that. And first I want to read what we have on the screen. So if you go back to Sundari Radha, if you go up, if you go to the top, you'll see Nadia, Sundari Radha again, and that's where you'll find this. That's what we'll read. Your ability to manage your emotions is one of the most important factors in managing your life. So here's why when we talk about emotional maturity, emotional management, it doesn't sound like Krishna consciousness, because those terms are never used exactly. The terms we're familiar with are control your mind, control your senses. That if I say manage your mind, you'll say yes, of course. It's Bhagavad Gita, 6th chapter, and so many other places Prabhupada talks about managing the mind. If I say control your senses, you'll say, of course, that's the basis of Krishna consciousness. If I talk about emotional maturity, emotional intelligence, emotional control, you'll say, this sounds like something you got somewhere else. So let's analyze this and show you that this is not something I got somewhere else. Now, Prabhupada says there's three functions of the mind, or also Shastra says that, or Ayurvedic, Vedic philosophy, psychology, Vedic psychology. There's thinking, there's feeling, and there's willing. So you've heard this before. You think about something, I would like to do this. You start to feel it. First it's a thought, there's no emotional connection. Then the mind has the capacity to feel as well as think. Sometimes you just think. Sometimes but you feel and you don't think. You've been there before, right? You just feel, your intelligence goes. Thinking, feeling, and willing, which is akin to this idea Krishna gives in Bhagavad Gita, Dayato Vishayam Punsam. You think about something, you become attached, and then from attachment, you act, thinking, feeling, willing. So Krishna's Dayato Vishayam Punsam Sangasteshu Pajayate, Sangat Sanjayate Kama. And then Krishna says you become angry, frustrated. But the first stages are you think about it, you meditate on it, you start to feel it, attachment, I like this, it feels good, and then I have to have it, and then you go for it, you act. So this feeling stage, that second stage, thinking to feeling, is the emotion. Now, some psychologists say, I don't know if it's true always, they say you feel before you think. You feel something before you think it. Maybe that's true for everyone, maybe it's not. I don't necessarily think that we have to discuss that as part of this discussion. But I just wanted to make you aware that in our philosophy, we may not use the word, we use the word feeling as an aspect of the mind. We don't say thinking, emotional, and willing, but feelings is synonymous with emotion. When we talk about emotion, generally, when that word is used in Krishna consciousness, it's used in terms of bhava, or different emotions in relation to Krishna. Bhava means emotion. On the stage of bhava, you manifest different emotions. In the stage of prema, you manifest different emotions. So you generally, when we talk about emotion, it's more in that area, or I should feel bhakti, I should feel devotion, I should feel love, like that. It's not, we don't look at it so much in terms of how people who teach emotional intelligence look at it. But I want to look at some things that Krishna says about emotional control without calling it that, without calling it emotional maturity, without calling it emotional intelligence, without calling it emotional control. And the way we're going to look at that is I want to ask you, so you can just put this in the chat. In your study of philosophy, what emotions does Krishna tell us to control? Because he teaches us to control. One should there's a verse in the Gita, one should strenuously try to control what? What emotions? So in this verse, there's two emotions Krishna tells us to control. But anything you can think of, any instruction in a verse in Bhagavad Gita, or anything you've heard from any devotee about controlling emotions that didn't necessarily come out with this word emotion, but it was a specific emotion that is necessary for us to control to become Krishna conscious. Just write that emotion down in the chat, because this will make you aware of how emotional control is incorporated essentially in Krishna consciousness. Because remember, the emotions are in the mind, and if we say control the mind, it has to include control the emotions. But now we're getting specific. So, what's an emotion that Krishna says we can control? Okay. Happiness is an emotion. Distress is emotion. Lust is emotion. Anger is emotion. Greed is an emotion. We're doing good. Anger, yes. Lust, anger, greed, yeah, that's another verse. Desire. The verse I was referring to is Krishna said desire. Icha dvesha. Icha means desire, hankering. Dvesha means can mean envy. It can mean hatred. So no one came up with hatred. Anger, okay, anger is hatred. But this is a good list and we could go on. So now we have just proven that Krishna does talk about emotional control. There's no question that our Shastras talk about emotional control. It's just not, we don't use those words. Now, how do our jealousy, okay, so how do our Shastras begin talking about attachment and aversion, emotion? Yeah, well, attachments, anything, yeah, because when you're attached, it's like, I have to have that. That's an emotion. I can't live without it. Aversion is, I don't want it. It bothers me. So there's all these emotional responses. And then, but our Shastra also talks about good attachment, affection, be attached to the devotees, have affection for the devotees. That's an emotion. Appreciation, that's another emotion. We talk a lot about that. You should appreciate. Prabhupada talks about appreciate devotees. So, we could probably spend the next hour of this class just reviewing and realizing that there is a lot of talk about the use of emotion in Krishna consciousness in a positive way, and the talk about the negatives of controlling emotions. So I just wanted to make you aware. If you think of any other emotions, you can bring them up. But we were just talking about negative emotions, right? So let's think about all the positive. We're talking now about the positive emotions we're supposed to engage, right? Affection, attachment, appreciation. What else? What other positive emotions? Love, devotion. We're supposed to have, the Shastra says that, you should have positive feelings towards devotees. When you see them, the Shastra says you should be happy when you see a devotee. Even the devotee you don't like, you should be happy to see. Oh, yeah, you're the one I don't like. Yeah, good to see you. Hare Krishna. You're that devotee that I can't stand. It's good to see you, Prabhu. Yeah, we're supposed to be happy. Compassion. Humility, yeah, that's a kind of emotion, feeling, yeah, compassion. So you can see how engaging emotions. Amrita Radhika, I didn't understand that one. Engaging emotions is necessary. Satisfaction is austerity of the mind. This is satisfaction is a feeling. Yeah, so engaging emotions positively and then controlling emotions which could be detrimental. That's part of the process. So definitely we can say that emotional control is necessary. Now, I use the title of emotional immaturity as one of the actions of an ineffective person. So all emotional immaturity means is not controlling emotions. That's what it means. To be emotionally immature means that your emotions allow you, your emotions control you rather than you control your emotions. So just like we say, control your mind, it will control you. Control your senses, otherwise they will control you. So there's no difference. When we say mind control, sense control, emotional control is just an aspect of mind control. That's all it is. If, as we said, the emotions are the subtle aspect of the mind, then when we say emotional control, we're just saying controlling a certain aspect of the mind. That's all we're saying. We're not coming up with some, we're teaching emotional intelligence. What's happening to the Hare Krishna movement? Prabhupada never did this. What's the future? Where's it going? You hear that kind of talk sometimes. Everything's changing. Everything's going downhill. Prabhupada never talked about this. When in fact, Prabhupada talked about so many things. He just didn't use the modern terminology that may be floating around today. And so sometimes they use that terminology just because people understand it or they can relate to it because they've heard it. So emotional intelligence means according to the definition of the author of emotional intelligence, it means being aware of your emotion, being aware of other people's emotions, and controlling those emotions. So we're focused now here on controlling. Okay, and I'm going to get to your comments and questions in a moment. We're focused here on emotional immaturity means giving into your emotions. Emotional maturity or emotional intelligence means controlling them. And now there's two levels of control. In any kind of control, it works on two levels. One level is you've healed or transcended those emotions so they no longer impact you. They're not, you've transcended anger. You've transcended envy, jealousy, and so forth. And then you're full of positive emotion. That's one level. The other level, which is where we start from, is you have not transcended them, but you don't give in to them. So that they're actually there trying to pull you, but you don't give in to them. That's the level of emotional control, emotional maturity that we begin at. And we're going to talk about that. But I just want to go back and see that there's some comments here. So lately in class, I think it's more interesting to read the comments and questions as we go because it's more interactive. And usually these classes end up lasting like an hour and a half. And so it's easier if we're going back and forth. So this is Andrea. She says, I've heard since I'm a kid that people that act under their emotions don't think before they act. And that to me sounds in a certain way to act radically and then not being conscious of their reactions or consequences. Yeah. Because I mean, if you want to put it simply in philosophical terms, you act based on your intelligence, or you act based on your feelings, how you feel. So, and when you act based on your feelings, you tend not to look at consequences. And one of the functions of intelligence is that you look at consequences. So if you're ever impelled to act in the wrong way, if you can move into intelligence, then your intelligence will control you. Of course, sometimes you can't, because as Krishna says, if you become too attached, at that point, you give in. Your intelligence will no longer function. If the emotional level is very high, your intelligence is overcome. Even modern psychologists understand this. When overcome by emotion, intelligence shuts off. When overcome by intelligence, you can control the emotion. And so naturally you would say, well, how do you prevent being overcome by your emotions? And that's a good question. And we're gonna talk about that, and we're also going to talk about what you can do when you are overcome by your emotions, because the more Krishna conscious you are and the more emotionally controlled, the more power you have to control yourself, or the more quickly you can go into intelligence when your emotions start to overpower you, so you don't want to come to this point where your emotions take control of you. That's the thing. You want to be able to pull away from it. You want to be able to have that emotional control, that you might say, well, I get angry, but now that I'm more mature, I can control it faster. So even though I get very angry, it doesn't go far. I don't say so many bad things as I used to, or I don't even say any bad thing. I'm able to control it. So we're going to talk a little more about that, but you were kind of leading in a little. This point you made is leading me into that discussion, but I want to see what everyone else has to say before we go into that discussion. Vrindavan is here all the way from Vrindavan, or are you in Houston? To learn, yeah. Sundarada says, to learn to control the emotions is to look at the unconscious meaning we give the original thought. The meaning is what creates the type of emotion we then experience. So if we explore the meaning, we give the... so if we explore the meaning, it can be the key to learn to control and not give in to them. Learn to control emotions is to look at the unconscious meaning we give the original thought. Yeah, well, the thought is triggering the emotion, and that... oh, I'll give an example of this. What Sundari Radha is saying. I heard a very interesting talk today, and Krishna Priya, I'm going to send this to you. It's a very interesting talk and very relevant to ISKCON. There's a man, he's a professor, and he works with criminals in prison. And he's had this incredible success in prison because he said 70% of the prisoners return, but with his method, it's down to maybe 30%. And he deals with them kind of like, you're no different than I am. You're no different than anybody else. That you've just maybe a little further down in the wrong direction. But in other words, he doesn't condemn them, because prisoners are generally condemned. Oh, just go into jail and you're useless. So, why did I get on this thought? It's look at the unconscious meaning you give the... so he was saying that most people, when they look at criminals and they look at what he does, they say, why would you want to be nice to them? Or why would you want to, deal with them kind of like equals? It doesn't make sense to them. But he realized by doing that, it actually helps them tremendously. And it really rehabilitates them. And there's a whole book on this. I forget the name of the book, but it was a whole philosophy of being kind to even criminals, treating them respectfully, making them comfortable, and not treating them like cattle and so forth. And it had a tremendous effect on them. So, let's say you look at a criminal and you say, this despicable person, this despicable bum, etc. So there's going to be emotions coming from that thought, but he doesn't think that way. He thinks, okay, here's people who need help. Maybe they've been misunderstood or mistreated, and that forced them into criminal activity. They need support and so on. So you can see his reaction to the criminal, like Sundari Radha is saying, it's different than most people's reaction to criminals, who people just think, treat them like the scum of the earth and don't give them the time of day because they don't deserve it. And he takes a different approach, and it rehabilitates them. And so he's able to do that because he's approaching from a different perspective. And because he's approaching from a different perspective, it's a different thought. And because it's a different thought, there's a different reaction. Sundari Radha is getting ahead of me. My whole talk has already been revealed by two devotees. I have nothing to say. Any questions? Okay, so we'll elaborate on these. Both of these points we'll elaborate on. And this is something that I've spoken. I don't know if you've heard me speak about this, but I'm always much more for prevention than trying to cure. Because devotees will say, or people will say, what do I do when I get angry? And I always say, do something before so you don't get angry. Because once you get angry, it's much more difficult to control it. It would be better to change perspectives. So your perspective is creating your emotional response. And so if you have a certain perspective, like Prabhu, there's Prabhu, I'm supposed to be happy to see all devotees. I'm so happy to see you. But that's the Prabhu who, stole your wallet last year, or, jumped in front of you in the prasadam line and took the last pakora, and you could never forgive him. But you've learned in the class that you should be happy to see all the Prabhus and all the Matajis. So you say, okay, and then you're happy to see him. There's the Prabhu who stole my pakora. Happy to see you, Prabhu. No problem. You stole my pakora. I didn't really deserve it anyway. You deserve it. So you're changing your thoughts about the situation, it changes your emotional response. One of the most interesting things that I learned, and this is so simple and it should be obvious, but I don't think it is so obvious. I learned this during the forgiveness workshop because I saw people forgiving, and I was kind of analyzing, well, what's actually happening when they forgive? How is it happening? And we go through a forgiveness process, but if you analyze what's actually happening, the whole process is changing the way they see that event. And so we put a devotee through exercises, like one exercise is, well, take the role of the person who abused you. Try to see it from their point of view. You go, okay. So you look at it from their point of view, how they might be feeling. Try to see them like in light of a weak person who's struggling. Okay, I see them. They're a weak person. Try to think of what might have been going on in their world when they did that, and then if you were them, would you want to be forgiven? Oh, okay, yeah, I would be. And so we're changing, and then we say, now, what do you think Krishna is saying about this whole picture? And you try to think, well, maybe Krishna's teaching me something, or however you see. So you're getting a different angle of vision. And other things we're doing. We ask the students to, get in touch with what they're feeling, and maybe they never got in touch with that feeling before. And so we're giving them different experiences, and we're giving them a different vision. Now, we have this phrase, Shastra Chakshus. Shastra means the scripture, and Chakshus means to see. And Shastra Chakshus means don't see it through your mental conditioned mind. See it through the scripture. Because if you see it through your mentally conditioned mind, you're going to have one response. If you see it through scripture, you have another response. Let's give an example. Young boy, very attractive, in the prime of youth, full chock-a-block, as they say in Australia, and this class is for Australia. Chock-a-block, mate. Chock-a-block with testosterone, ready to, conquer the world, so to speak. And he becomes a brahmachari, and then he learns something very important for a brahmachari. See every woman as mother. That bit of knowledge changes his relationship with women. He doesn't see them now as every woman is fair game for me to enjoy. Women were put on earth for my enjoyment. And I love to see them. I love to talk to them. I want to touch them. I want to be with them. That's all how he grew up. That's how he was trained to see them as, these women are put on earth for you. Basically, that's how he was trained, how all the young boys were conditioned to see that way. And then he becomes a brahmachari, and he learns you should see women as mother. That means respect. You should respect them. They're Krishna's gopis, Krishna's servants. They're your god sisters, and so on. So what happened? The whole emotional response changes because that bit of information that he has changed his vision, which changed his response. So in the forgiveness workshop, what's actually happening is throughout the workshop, the perception of that event is changing little by little by little. The story about what happened changes. And so at the end, if you were to write your story in the beginning, this is what happened, and then write your story at the end, this is what happened, you'd actually have a different story. But the story at the end, if you read that story, automatically you'll forgive, because it's a narrative that forms the basis of a vision, which would then automatically, I don't want to say enable forgiveness, it would automatically result in forgiveness. If I see it, let's say somebody hurt me, and then I find out, well, that person was hurt when he was growing up, and he struggled, and his mother treated him this way and that, and he really didn't mean to hurt you, and et cetera, et cetera. And you start feeling sorry for him, or you start understanding his position. It changes your story. So when the story changes, it's like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. Okay, that makes me... You ever say that? Oh, I didn't know that. I feel different about it. Oh, I wish I would have known that, because I would have felt different. So, how do you turn off your... Oh, that was somebody trying to video chat with me. Why do you do this to me? I have to control my emotions. So we take them through a process to change the vision. And now if you read the story at the end and you read it with that story, naturally, there's no resentment anymore. You read the story that they came in with, you say, but that story, of course you're going to be resentful. So everything in life, if you want to elevate your emotional response, you have to elevate your story around that. Otherwise, your story is creating a certain emotional response. So that's part of emotional maturity. You really got way ahead of me real fast. We're moving real fast in this class. Then I might as well go back to what Andrea said, since that was another point I wanted. It was about controlling emotion. So Andrea's question was, what happens when they're there? Sundari Radha's point is you can not have to deal with negative emotions if you change the thoughts that are causing them, which is what I teach, which is what I think, of course, is the superior way. But practically, it's not always like that because we're conditioned. Or sometimes, you understand something, but still something triggers you and you're like, don't tell me. Who are you to tell me that? Just like that conditioning comes. So another principle, here's another principle. First principle is change your thoughts about the event, change your perception about the event, change the perception so that what was causing the anger or the jealousy or the envy no longer triggers it, because your thoughts, your perception is triggering whatever it is. Like, and you might say, yeah, but I'm being triggered by events of the past. Well, you need to see those events differently. Maybe you can see those events as learning experiences, or you think, well, this happened to me, and because this happened to me, therefore I act this way. Maybe you need to change that and say, because that happened to you doesn't mean you have to act this way. You just think it does. There's a lot of people that this happened to who don't think like you do. So you go, oh, really? You mean, people have been hurt the way I have hurt, and they don't react to the situation where I'm, yeah, they don't. Well, how do they react, or how do they see it? So you start learning that you can change the way you see it. So that's one way, and that's the better way, and that's the way I always suggest. But when you're practicing that, or being a conditioned soul, you're still going to have to deal with those occasions when you give in to some negative emotional or immature emotional response. So how do you deal with that? Well, I always say that in any type of transformation or growth, there has to be self-awareness, because one of the biggest problems is, like, let's say you could be envious of someone, and I say, it seems like you're envious of this person. You could deny it. So now you deny it. So there's nothing you can do about it because you can't control it. Or I notice that you get angry very easily, and I say, Prabhu, think you have a problem. You get angry quite easily. No, I don't. I never do. And you've probably seen that either with other people that you tell them you have this problem. They say, no, I don't. The only problem I have is with you telling me that I have a problem. I don't have a problem with anger. I don't have a problem with jealousy. That's because you have a problem with it. You think I have a problem with it. So if you don't recognize the problem, then forget it. You can't resolve it. And that's that's one definition of emotional maturity. You're not even in touch with your emotions. You don't even realize. Now you might say, but it's so obvious that this person has an anger issue. And one reason they may not notice is that's the way they've always been. So there's no like black and white. it's one color. They don't know another color. I mean, you try to tell a person who's narrow-minded that they're narrow-minded. How are they going to understand that? That's the only way they see the world, is very narrow. And so how are they going to understand they're narrow-minded? That's the only way they've seen it. There's no comparison. So sometimes that's a reason people won't acknowledge. Sometimes the reason is just unconscious. We're just unconscious. We're unaware. We don't want to be aware. Sometimes the reason is we think, I don't know if I should say we think we're perfect, but at least we say we don't believe we have these faults. We don't see ourselves as an angry person. So somehow or other, I'm an angry person, but I don't see myself that way. So I don't notice it because it doesn't fit with my self-conception. So this happens a lot. If you think you're, I'm very advanced, I'm very shanti, or I'm not an envious person, I'm not a lusty person, I'm not a greedy person, when in fact you are, but because you think you are, you can't see that. There's no self-awareness. And so when there's no self-awareness, how do you correct a problem that you don't believe you have? How do you correct a problem you don't see you have? So it starts with self-awareness. It starts with humility. It starts with being able to look at ourselves and stand back and say, okay, I'm ready to look. Am I emotionally immature in certain areas? I'm ready to stand back and look at it. I'm ready to become aware. Ideally, become aware in the moment when you're doing it and catch yourself and say, I'm doing this right now. This is wrong. That may take some time for some of us to admit it, to become aware. So that's stage one. You have to admit it. Stage two doesn't automatically come from stage one. Stage two is you have to do something about it. And just because you admit it doesn't mean you're going to do something about it. Because sometimes when you admit it, then you say something stupid like, this is just how I am, and there's nothing I can do about it. So then you don't try. So I would say that at stage two, we have to have confidence that there's something we can do about it. The problem is we may not know what it is. And so saying there's nothing I can do about it sometimes means I don't know what to do about it. Not that there's nothing I know. Or we say something like, I've tried, it doesn't work. Well, maybe you should get someone who can help you with anger management. I've tried, it doesn't work. Well, maybe you should read a book on anger management. I have, it doesn't work. So you've kind of given up. So, and then, I would question that maybe you weren't, at the time you read the book or did the counseling, maybe you weren't in the right space to cure it. Maybe you didn't want to, or you weren't able, you weren't ready for it. So that's possible. But generally there is a way, unless you're like a special person who's extremely damaged, which is not the case for most of us, if the case for any of us. So you recognize the problem, you're willing to do something. Now, let's look at what sadhana bhakti is. Sadhana, the word itself, means practice. What does practice mean? Practice means you're doing something that perhaps you wouldn't naturally do. So you have to practice it. Like we've been talking, if you've been coming to the morning classes, we've been talking about training the mind to think of Krishna. Why do you have to train the mind to think of Krishna? Because naturally the mind does not think of Krishna. Therefore, there's a training. You have to kind of force it. You kind of have to bring it back. So sadhana means it's a training period to do something that doesn't come naturally. That's what training means. Once you're trained, you do it. Then you don't have to train. You're training to act in a specific way, a way that you want to act, whether it's sports training or academic training, academic discipline, or physical discipline, exercise, learning an instrument, learning a skill. It's a training. Sadhana is called practice, so it's a training. So now I'm in this stage where I haven't got to stage two, where I've altered my vision so well and so permanently that I don't get these negative emotional responses. I'm very patient. I'm very compassionate. I'm very controlled. I'm no longer envious. I really appreciate everybody. I'm very understanding, so I don't get angry with people. I understand everybody's struggling, everyone's human, and I'm more understanding than I am angry, and I'm very able to let go of things I can't control. I've made peace with this fact that there's so many things I can't control. Okay, that's a higher stage. In that stage, you're very emotionally mature because you don't have all these triggers, these old triggers. You've healed your old triggers. But until you've done that, then this is what sadhana means. Sadhana means to practice controlling things that are pulling you. It's like it's controlling your temptation. So Krishna says one should strenuously try to control anger and desire. So that presupposes there is anger and there is desire, but you have to control it. So what do you do? How do you control it? Well, in sadhana, one way sadhana begins is you don't act on it. So you may not control it to the point where it's not there, like we've been talking about by controlling it through changing perception. But when it is there, your control is not to act on it. So I feel anger, but I'm not going to act on it. So that may be for many of us where it's all going to begin. And so then a natural question is, well, how do I not act on how I'm feeling? It begins first with understanding you can feel something and not act on it, because I think a lot of us think, well, if you feel it, you'll act on it, because it seems like thinking, feeling, willing follows feeling, which is true. It does follow it, but it doesn't have to follow it, because when it's feeling, you can go back to your intelligence, understand the ramifications of this, understand, even though I'm feeling like this, if I act this way, it would be destructive. You look at the future, you look at the ramifications, you look at what you are trying to be as a devotee, what you're trying to cultivate, and then you control that. So even though you're being impelled to act in a certain way, that the carrot is dangling, the temptation is there, you control it, you don't act on it. So it's there. Like a lot of times I joke, I'm in a situation where there's something that I like, or I liked as a non-devotee. And so we're in this situation, and I turn to devotees, it's a joke, and I say, if I wasn't a devotee, you know what I would do right now? So it's to express like the impetus is there, or that desire is there. A lot of times it's a joke because the desire, it's really gone. It's like very faint. But I realize, if I wasn't a devotee right now in this situation, this is what I would be doing. So it's kind of like a joke, like they say, Prabhu, when I'm eating, they say, would you want some more? And I say, if I wasn't a devotee, I would eat a whole nother plate. But because I'm a devotee, I'm not going to do it. It's not good because I don't want to get up late. I don't want this or that to happen. So, if we go somewhere and say, Prabhu, would you like to do this? I say, if I wasn't a devotee, yeah, I'd love to do it. But I'm a devotee, so I'm not going to do it. So it's something like that. It's like, it's not that the feeling to do it is not there, but you have a practice. You don't do that. You can't do that. It's not part of devotional service anymore. Like, becoming angry because you can't control someone or some situation, becoming angry, which has no benefit for anyone, is not part of devotional service. It's just part of our conditioned nature. So, something upsets you and you think, this upsets me, but I'm a devotee. So now that I'm a devotee, I can't go up to this person and yell at them. Or in an extreme case, let's say you were the kind of person that you didn't like somebody, you just come up to them and push them around. You're some tough guy, Or you would get in fights on the street and so forth. But now you're a devotee, somebody's harassing the Harinam party and you feel like, yeah, I'm just going to knock this guy in the face. No, it's not what devotees do. I mean, unless the guy's going to knock you in the face, yeah, but otherwise, you don't do it. So there's this, you're impelled to do that because that's your conditioned nature. But I'm a devotee. Devotees don't do that. So I practice controlling them. So that's the idea. That idea you have to get in your head, that it's just this little mantra. I don't have to act on what I feel. There can be an intervention. This is how I feel, but I don't have to act on it because as a devotee, as a non-devotee, there's generally, for most things that we feel, there's generally no reason not to act on them. Hey, I feel like going out, doing this and that. Okay, we don't have a sense of, we have a different sense of right and wrong. We have a different sense of what's sin. Or honestly, before I was a devotee, I didn't even use the word sin. It just wasn't in my head, wasn't in my vocabulary. It was the concept that, I didn't even think something was sinful. Interesting, right? I had no idea something was sinful. So now as a devotee, you understand, oh, this is sinful. I shouldn't do it. So with that intelligence, even though you're still feeling it, you don't act on your feeling. And so let's look at Arjuna. That's basically what Krishna was dealing with Arjuna. In the beginning, Arjuna had certain feelings. What was the main feeling? Overwhelm. Arjuna was giving in. Arjuna was not acting emotionally immaturely. He was emotionally immature. So Bhagavad Gita was a conversation, you could say, in emotional maturity, to bring Arjuna to a point of controlling himself. So he was in overwhelm mode. He was so overwhelmed he couldn't act according to his intelligence, which was to do his duty to fight. So then he was in feeling mode. It was just like, if you look at all his arguments, they're all about how he feels. And if you look at Krishna's arguments, they're all about, this is how you're supposed to act, no matter how you feel. So you have this dynamic going. Arjuna's saying, yeah, but I feel this way. And Krishna's saying, yeah, but this is your duty. No, but you don't understand. This is how I feel. No, you don't understand. This is your duty. Yeah, but I don't feel that. Who cares about how you feel? This is your duty. But I care how I feel, because I'll be sad if they're going to die. Yeah, but don't lament. They'll die anyway. It's your duty. So you have this is going back. It's almost like a conversation with your mind. I want to do this. No, don't do it. It's not what Kshatriyas do. No, but I feel like this is the best thing. No, but you're a Kshatriya, you have to fight. Yeah, but I feel compassion, Yeah, well, you're not supposed to feel compassion right now. You're supposed to feel angry at these people, because if they win this battle, the world's going to hell. Yeah, but I kind of feel detached. You're not supposed to feel detached. So it's like Krishna's, Arjuna's presenting all these emotions, and Krishna's saying, don't act on them. You're not supposed to act on them. And what Krishna's telling Arjuna, he's not so much telling Arjuna, he's basically giving instructions to Arjuna so he can do the practice. He's not giving so many instructions per se to transcend it yet. Transcending it comes later. He's giving him more instructions like, this is the practice. Don't give in. Don't give in to your emotions. That's the practice. That's the duty. That's the dharma. Follow your dharma. Don't follow your feelings. So that's the first stage, where you haven't understood enough to be able to transcend. You don't have enough control of how you perceive, and shastric vision and realization and so forth, to be able to see it in a new way so it doesn't affect you, or to be able to transcend it entirely by your spiritual advancement. So then you work on developing the strength to tolerate, like Krishna told Arjuna, tolerate. Summer and winter is coming, going. Happiness, distress, it comes and goes. Just tolerate it. It's what is tolerance other than not giving into a feeling? Right now I feel like A, but if I do this, it's wrong. So I have to tolerate what I'm feeling, because the action will get me in trouble. That's all tolerance is. all tolerance is emotional control. Now, I just want to go back to the very beginning, this concept of emotional immaturity. Because usually when we talk about emotional immaturity, we talk about kids. And I want to put this in context of adults. Because the way kids act when they're immature gives us a very good example of what emotional immaturity is and how we sometimes are emotionally immature. Emotionally immature kids are not controlled emotionally. They're unreasonable. And as kids grow up, you see when they're very young, emotionally, they're just out of control. You know, one moment they're happy, and the next moment their brother takes their toy away and they're ready. They're like Lord Shiva, ready to destroy the universe. And you look at these kids and go, he just took away your little plastic army guy, you know, here, I'll give you a ball. And, no, I'm my army guy, you know, and you're looking at that. And then sometimes you look at that and say, you know, this is scary. Because sometimes I'm like that when someone takes something for me. Or I've seen other people, they're sometimes like that when some attachment is taken away from them. And so by studying the emotional immaturity of children, we can understand something about ourselves, how easily they become upset. Sometimes children will they'll completely lose it. They'll become very angry or they can't understand it. I have to have this, I want it now, it's mine, give it to me, like that. And so emotional immaturity means that this inability to control our emotions is very similar to the emotional immaturity of children. One aspect of emotional immaturity that I see that's common, and it's sad to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway, that we even see it in devotees. But sadder to say this, we even see this in sometimes in devotees who are very advanced or very renounced, but not emotionally controlled. So you can be very renounced in some ways, but not emotionally renounced. So they could become very upset about something. And I've seen this. I've seen it recently. And it seems like the devotee is justifiably upset. And that's probably what he's telling himself. But from my perspective, he's not controlling his feelings about a situation. He feels that his feelings are Krishna conscious. My perspective was they weren't. Those feelings are not Krishna conscious. It was rationalizing those feelings. My perspective, who knows something about psychology, was you're not emotionally controlled. And of course, the problem is, this is a very interesting problem, if you're an advanced devotee, you would never think this way because you think, I'm advanced, of course I'm controlled. Look, I get up early every morning. Every day for the last 5,000 years, I've chanted my rounds. I've been following the four principles for 1,000 lifetimes. How is it that I'm not controlled? But the emotional level is more subtle, and we don't always look at the emotional level when we're calculating how controlled we are. So I've seen this a lot with a lot of devotees, that it's like they're not aware of this level of control. In all these other ways that they're aware, they're very controlled. And if they could be made aware, say, Prabhu, do you realize on the emotional level, you have room to improve? Once they become aware, they say, oh, okay, I can see, I said the wrong thing. I shouldn't have said that. I was sarcastic. What was that sarcasm coming from? It was coming from some kind of regression towards this person. Not regression, aggression. It's coming from some sort of aggression or dislike from something that happened in the past, and I still don't like him. And I in some way was trying to condemn him to make him suffer, and it's all very subtle. And I'm just thinking, no, I'm just doing my duty, putting him in his place, when actually that may not be always what's happening. So that's a challenge that we have as devotees. And this sounds funny, but it's true. When you become advanced in Krishna consciousness, sometimes connecting with these things is difficult because it's not on your radar. You think you've transcended it all. Look at how controlled I am. How I'm not aware of this emotional lack of control. Right? And if there is an emotional lack of control, then the worst thing we can do is justify it. well, it's justifiable. They acted this way. That's why I'm acting this way. No, that doesn't justify your action. So that's a whole other topic, but I just want to bring it up as an awareness that as you progress in spiritual life, you can be illusioned about your own ability to control your emotions, because by thinking you're controlling your senses in certain ways, you become blind to the fact that on certain emotional levels, you may be reacting immaturely. You may not be reacting intelligently, and you may rationalize that or try to rationalize it through Shastra. You see this a lot also, like sometimes devotees are condemned. And you think, in the name of duty to my guru, I'm condemning them. In the name of following Shastra, I'm condemning them. When really, you're just fulfilling, and really, it's just, you're not controlling your emotions. You're laying into them because you're angry, and you don't want to admit that. And so the way you get around that and say, no, I'm not angry. This person has done something wrong, and that's why I'm angry. I'm angry at the injustice. When in fact, that may not be true. It may be true. Sometimes it may not be true always. You're just not being controlled. And then you rationalize it through saying, no, here's the Shastra, and therefore I can validate my anger. So it's tricky, because sometimes you can and sometimes you can't. But if you're not aware of it, then as you advance, you could kind of have a lot of blind spots in your life, because you think you're like perfect because you've perfected this part of your life. So you think this other part of your life is perfect, and you have this big blind spot. I'm just saying this from personal experience, and I'm saying this from seeing other devotees who I respect, who are very advanced, who I can see have a few blind spots in certain areas where they're very conditioned to think about something in a certain way because that's the way they were brought up. And so they say things sometimes which could be hurtful or unkind. It could be seen as somewhat aggressive or critical or sarcastic or whatever. And they don't necessarily think that's what it is, but in fact it is. And they're not aware of it. So that's something we have to recognize. And I'm not saying this so you go around with your magnifying glass and find all the advanced devotees that are emotionally immature and go, I spotted one. It's so-and-so Maharaj. I could see, did you see the other day when he did that? Emotional immaturity. That's not why I'm saying it. I'm saying that don't think just because you advance in Krishna consciousness, automatically you'll become emotionally mature. There may be parts of you that don't become emotionally mature until you're aware of that and until you work on it. I'm not saying this so you can find fault with someone. I'm only saying this that there are very advanced devotees that still have aspects of their life. It may only be one thing or two things, aspects of their life where they haven't matured emotionally. And so this discussion was based on the fact that when you become aware of that, then you can do something. And then what do? You do like Arjuna did, and like what Krishna is telling him, and say, okay, you're saying, I feel this, I feel this, I feel this. And when we say, I feel this, I feel this, I feel this, there's this like natural response. I feel it, therefore I have to do it. Isn't it? It's like, well, if I feel it, it's like one teacher said, don't believe everything you feel. And I thought that looks like, so first he said, don't believe everything you think. All right. So we totally get that, right? You think so many things, and you know, it's just my mind filtering through the modes of nature. So then when I heard him say that, and I said, yeah, and don't believe everything you feel, which may be much more difficult because we can understand, we think things that are just conditioned thoughts, and we're seeing through the modes of nature, and we just look at them and we know this is not the right way to think. But when it gets to feeling, it's more subtle because the feeling is more connected with like, well, this is how I feel. And how I feel is who I am. And how you feel is not who you are. It's a feeling. It's a subtle thought. When the thought has emotion connected to it, it's called a feeling. But it's no different than the thought. It's not you. The thought is not you. You understand, that was a bad thought. I shouldn't think that way. Well, that was a bad emotion. I shouldn't feel that way. But it's more difficult because we tend to think we are emotions. We identify more with the emotions than we do with our thoughts. I mean, a lot of us identify with our thoughts, but definitely we identify with our emotions. And so when we feel something, it's like our whole worldview is often seen through the lens of our feeling. Well, if I feel this way, this must be true. No, not necessarily. So that's the challenge. So that's what Arjuna was going through. It's like, no, this is how I feel. This must be true because it's how I feel. Isn't it? I mean, if you analyze that conversation, then you're going to see, basically, that's how Arjuna's feeling. No, but this is how it is. And then Arjuna comes to this point where he has a realization, he has an epiphany. It's like, this, from my perception, is all true, but the problem is it's making me quite miserable. And if it's making me quite miserable, then I guess it couldn't be true, because if it was true, I wouldn't feel this way. So, in any case, the point is that it doesn't matter how you feel, you don't have to act on your feelings. That's called sadhana bhakti. So, when someone says, how do I control my anger? If that anger cannot be used for Krishna, at least if it's there, understand you don't have to act on it. You can practice not acting on it. And then you can work on what's triggering your anger or your envy or your greed or lust, and then start to change your perception, change your stories around it. So when you change your stories, you heal those triggers and you no longer have those triggers. And instead, wouldn't this be good? This is kind of like the culmination. So let's say you have a trigger that makes you angry. Well, wouldn't it be good to replace that trigger with a trigger that makes you compassionate towards the person that you were always angry at? Wouldn't that be amazing? What if you heal your trigger so the person you're envious of, you respect? The person you're jealous of, you want to serve. Wouldn't that be amazing if you healed your triggers in that way to get the exact opposite response? Well, that's what Krishna consciousness teaches you how to do. You turn your lust into love. You turn your anger into compassion. You turn your envy into respect and service. That's amazing, right? So that's ultimately the goal. That's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to get to. So that's really what we're supposed to be working on. But on the way to working on it, we have to learn how, at least learn the fact that when I feel a certain way, it doesn't mean I have to act on it. I am not those feelings. And it means I have to learn to practice not acting on it. So I feel this way towards this Prabhu. That's the Prabhu who stole my pakora by getting in front of me in the prasadam line, and he took the last pakora. And the last 5 months, I've been throwing darts at his picture. And now I finally see him. And so now I'm confronted with, okay, how do I feel about this Prabhu? I can at that point practice. Okay, he's a devotee. It's just a pakora, not such a big thing. And I should learn to respect him. Of course, we're making up a story. We're exaggerating, but you get the idea. And so you start to look at him and you start to see him in a more compassionate light, and all of a sudden you're happy to see him. So let me see if you have anything else while I was talking. Okay, so Parker says, we see in spiritual life the devotees are astoundingly emotional. So can you speak on the balance of controlling our emotions and living with emotions, fully invested in our devotional activities? Emotions is not a bad word. Yeah, so I think the problem for some devotees is the word emotion sounds like, oh, Prabhu, you're sentimental. Sentimental means I just feel this way. I don't know, but I just feel this way. So, this is the Siddhanta. The Siddhanta is how I feel. If I feel this way, it must be true. So emotion gets a negative. Prabhu, it's time to go on Sankirtan. I don't feel like it. Don't give in to your emotions. So, but you have emotions, so it's just utilizing them in a proper way. So bhakti is all about emotion, feeling, attachment to Krishna, attachment to devotees, feeling emotions for the Bhagavatam, the holy name, the holy places, all of these things. So emotions are not bad. Nothing's bad except when it degrades you. Even anger. We were talking, I think, yesterday in class, in the morning class, but anger can be great inspiration. You see something that's going on in the world, and it makes you really angry. But that anger inspires you to preach. So I can't stand that innocent people are being cheated in this way. And so it inspires you to go out and meet people and tell them the truth. So anger is not bad. All these emotions are not bad. They can be used in Krishna service. So, emotion is not a bad word. I think, emotion has a bad rap in ISKCON. Women, what's wrong with women? They're so emotional. It's just, anything happens and they just break down. And so it's like emotion. No, okay, women are emotional. Women are less intelligent. Women are this, women are that. Women are emotional. Emotional is bad. Second-class citizens, So it's like, don't be sentimental, Prabhu. You got to be shastric. So like the whole word emotion is like, it's got such a bad rap. When bhakti's all about emotion, it's all about feeling for Krishna, So, women are emotional. That's good. Put your emotion into Krishna. Cry for Krishna. That's fantastic. Amitaradhika says, low self-esteem can affect people in being self-aware and authentic with themselves because it's hard to look at the self and admit they're acting a certain way. There's a sense of shame that they can't admit they're acting a certain way. Yeah, exactly. But we, if you go back like to my classes in Mayapur, January, February, we really got into this idea about false ego preventing us from seeing where we have to improve ourselves, because the false ego is saying, I'm not like that. There may be different reasons. Low self-esteem is one. Arrogance can be another. I just don't want to admit to myself that I'm like this. And so that's a real enemy. If you have a big false ego, you can't admit what your problems are. And if you can't admit what your problems are, they're not going to go away, because you don't even know you have them. How can you get rid of something you don't even know you have? Right? I once went to a chiropractor and he said, walk. And he said, do you know one of your feet are going out this way and one straight? And I said, I had no idea. But probably what happened is I had cracked my hip. And so probably it changed and that's why it was happening. But he said, you're walking 1 foot out and 1 foot straight. And when I saw him, it probably had been 10 years, I had no idea I was walking like that. So life is like that. There are things we have no awareness of. That's why it's good to get married, because your spouse will tell you everything that's wrong with you that you never saw. This Krishna Karshani sent me this comedy routine, and this guy was saying, there's so many things I didn't know before I got married. I don't know how I would have died if And he was, he said, I didn't know how to dress until I got married. I get dressed, and my wife will look at me and go, you're not going out like that. So you're just making jokes about that. Like, I didn't know that this food was bad for me. And my wife says, you're not eating that. And so he's joking. I'd probably be dead now because I'd be eating that. So it's just going like for 10 minutes, all these things he learned from his wife. It was just so funny because it was so true. So that's the one good thing about marriage. The thing that we hate the most about marriage is that this person is telling you what you're like, but it's actually the best thing about it, because there's a lot of things we don't know about ourselves. And that's unfortunate, because we can't improve it. Now you're all going to ask me, what's his name? I want to see it. It's on my phone, so I can't tell you. But it is so funny, just about how his wife totally controls his life. And he tells the story. This is classic. He was behind a man. I don't know if he made this up, but it doesn't matter. It's so funny. he was behind a man and his wife, and when he was staying in a hotel, and he overheard them saying, he said to his wife, he said, I'm hungry, I want to get something. No, he must have been coming this way, and the man was coming this way, and they were talking. And this man could understood that he was hearing the conversation. He said to his wife, I'm hungry, I want to get something to eat. And his wife said, you are not hungry. He was walking by and he said to this comedian, he said, I guess I'm not hungry. I guess, that feeling of hunger is just an illusion. I didn't know I really wasn't hungry. I actually thought I needed to eat. And by the mercy of my wife, I realized that I don't have to eat because I'm actually not hungry. It's just an illusion. That burning in my stomach is just an illusion. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't know. So it was jokes like that, but there's so much truth to that. I just feel so sorry for all of those, all of you who are not married, because you'll never know what's wrong with you until you live with someone who can tell you every day, 24/7, what's wrong with you. So if you don't want to get married, all I can say is you better be honest with yourself, because if you're not, you'll never know. No one's ever going to tell you. Hare Krishna. Okay, that's not an absolute Shastric statement, but it's just interesting. And in fact, of course that's not Shastra, but so many devotees have told me this. They actually were serious, and they would say, I don't know how these sannyasis and brahmacharis, I don't know how they do it, because who's there to tell them what's wrong with them? Who's there to bring them down to earth? They said, you're married. It's like your wife's there, like, no, you think you're great, you're not so great. Don't get puffed up. You're not as great as you think you are. I just had a guy brother last week tell me that. It was like so funny. He was exactly saying that. He said, I don't know how these sannyasis can do it. I feel bad for them because they need somebody like this. So, and it's all based on the fact that it's hard to see ourselves. We don't have, we have lots of blind spots. Okay, Charles Stone says, am I mentally damaged seeing beings as persons? I'm not sure what that means. Am I too emotional with plants and insects? Put beans with water and start growing out, boiling them that way. I think they're more nutritious. I'm not exactly sure what you're saying, but I know bean sprouts are good. Put your beans in water, let them sprout, and then make your dal. That's good, but I don't think that's what you're asking. I'm dealing with beans as persons. Not so normal. Emotional with plants and insects. Prabhupada was very respectful of plants and insects. He used to let insects that crawled on his plate eat his prasadam, or there'd be some insect in, some fly or something banging at the window trying to get out, or somebody, bird or something, and he tells the disciple, take him, set him free, put him out. So not bad to be conscious of the suffering of others. Andrea says, emotions can also be suppressed and then projected in other people. Yes, like the example you're giving right now. Yeah. So that's a whole other topic, and it's already we already have about 8 minutes left. Suppressing emotions is also denying what we're talking about, and then they come out in some strange way. Unawareness of them, and sometimes we suppress them because we don't know what to do with them. So sometimes Prabhupada said, well, if you can't suppress them, control them, then use them. So you have to find that maybe there's an outlet to use it. Like, what do I do with my lust? We'll get married. What do I do with my anger? Protect Krishna consciousness against the Mayavadis. So, find some outlet for your anger. Okay, what do I do with my anger? Well, I'll go out in Harinam and I'll protect all the devotees, in case anybody, I'll be the security guard. And if anybody attacks the devotees, I'll protect them. So that's also there. That's also part of this discussion, is outlets for your anger. I have these feelings, I have these emotions. How do I deal with it? Not those emotions cannot always be used. There's not always a context to use them. So certainly you have to control them, but sometimes you can use them. I have a client who has anger issues and she's aware of it, but believes she doesn't need to change and people should accept her as she is. Yeah. Well, then her life's going to stay the same, and whatever problem she has is going to remain. Yesterday, a little black spider came out from somewhere in my room and drank water and then I left after the shower, and I couldn't believe from my leg drinking water and back and that. Anyway, I'm not sure exactly what you're saying, but don't kill spiders and chant Hare Krishna to them. How can we change the way we react to someone's feedback when they tell us we are not doing something right? Sometimes we get angry, sometimes we feel sad, sometimes we run away. How can we work on ourselves to react in a humble and positive way? Well, Lakshmi Priya, you have about 6 hours. I can answer that question. One of the ways we can think is that, especially if the feedback, like sometimes you get feedback, it's actually good, you just don't want it. Because you work so hard, you're trying to please somebody, and then they get on your case. So if the feedback is actually good, then with your intelligence, you should realize, actually, this is good to have this person around because they're helping me. And if what they're saying can actually help me, and I realize that, then I should think, I'm actually fortunate to get this kind of feedback. Because in the long run, it's going to make my life better. So if that's the case, then it's very easy to get over this. Because then you can realize, I'm actually fortunate to have this person in my life giving this to me. Now, if that's not the case, and the person is just not able to control himself and taking it out on you, then you need to understand that that's what's happening. That it's their weakness, and you're the object or you're the target of their weakness, and it has nothing to do with you. And I put a quote on here in the description. Listen to this. It says, this is not my quote. It was stated by someone who teaches anger management. Every time we allow someone's words or actions to get to us, we become that person's puppet. So let's say this person is saying things about you that are actually not true and they're not helpful. And so you can think, okay, it's coming from their own issues, their own weakness, their own contamination, their own need to whatever, dominate, control, criticize for whatever reasons they have. And it's a kind of, there are issues that they're going through. But now, allowing yourself to be affected by their issues, then you become a puppet of their emotions because you're being controlled by their emotions. So that's another way of seeing it. So either the feedback you're getting is good, and you realize it's good, and then you feel, if you just, can curb your ego and let it in, you think, actually, this is really good that I'm getting this. And Prabhupada once said that if the Guru chastises you, and you could also think about this in terms of other people, if the Guru chastises you, you should think, well, that's his mercy, that he's taking time. So if someone's giving you good feedback, they're actually taking time to spend with you. And maybe they're not so great at giving feedback in a way that's so digestible. But if it's actually good and helpful, then you just think about it and just say, thank you. That's really good. I appreciate it. That's helpful. Or say, thank you, I'm going to think about that. From a philosophical perspective, Bhaktisiddhanta said you can think that any kind of negative feedback where you're being put down, you could think, well, I need to be humble, and so this person's making me humble, and I should accept it that Krishna sent this person to make me humble. So you can think that way, or you can just think, it's this person's personal issues, and they're attacking me, and if I get affected by this, then I'm just being controlled by their emotions, and that's foolish. So that's the 3-minute introduction to the 6-hour workshop on your question, but see if that helps for now. Amitaradhika says, Brahmacharya ashram helps in this form of emotional training. Control the mind and desires. The austerity can be difficult. At times, however, after sometimes it helps. Later on, when you're changing ashrams. Also, it's not a fact that you won't get feedback in the Brahmacharya ashram. You may get the same kind of feedback your spouse would give you sometimes, and it's not always easy. But feedback, ultimately we all need feedback. We don't always like it, but Lakshmi Priya, my experience, I don't know if this will relate to everyone, but my experience is the more you practice accepting feedback, the easier it is the next time you get it. The next time you get it, the next time you get it, the next time. It's kind of like you start to learn to remove the false ego, and you just hear what they're saying without feeling you need to defend yourself or your ego's being smashed or anything. Then you just hear what they're saying, because most of the time when we get feedback, at least in the devotional circles, they're just trying to help us realize something so we can do better in our service or be better. And so when you hear it that way and say, like a lot of times devotees will say, if you do this, I think it'll be better. Or if you give class this way, I think it'll be better. Or more people relate. If you talk about this, more people relate. So all I'm hearing is information, how to do better. I'm not feeling like, what, you think my class isn't good? So when you're hearing that, oh, you're attacking me. They're not attacking me. They're actually trying to help me and say, why don't you, like Jayadev, he wrote me. He said, why don't you in the middle of class pick up your guitar and sing a song about what you're talking about? He wasn't like chastising me or saying something's wrong. He was just saying, I think that would really be good because you could do that and you could go deeper. So my ego wasn't saying, who are you to tell me what to do? There was no ego. I was just listening. Okay, let's consider this. It's just information how to do better. So if you can hear it as information to do better, put your ego aside, then you're good. But if you can't put your ego aside, then you're going to take it personally, and then you won't be able to listen. What do you mean you're attacking me? You're telling me I'm doing something wrong? What's this, play guitar? Probably never played guitar in class. I have a profile. That's not right. You don't know what you're talking about. That's the ego talking. But you remove the ego and you just consider the information. Oh, that's an interesting idea. Okay, let me consider that. That could be nice. So I think that maybe makes it a little more clear that it's not about you and looking good and your own emotional needs. It's about the information. And if you see it as information distinct from your own ego, then you can let that information in and you can use it. And if it's just someone attacking you, then why pay attention? Why get all upset if someone's attacking me? If that's their issue, why would I want to be, no one ever attacks me. No one ever attacked me. They had no reason to attack me until I became a guru. Then I was getting attacked all the time. It was like, hey, you want your ego to be smashed? I have a suggestion. Become a guru. So, I'm just doing the same thing I always did. Nothing changed. Probably doing better than I did before. And now he's a guru. Who does he think he is? He's a guru and he does this, So, and then I would think, if what they're saying is obviously coming out of envy and they're just attacking me and I'm getting upset, then I failed as a person because I'm giving in to some person's own anarthas or own, they need to heal themselves. They have a problem and I'm allowing their problem to affect me. So as the saying goes, you punish yourself for the fault of another person. So this person's mistreating you and you get all upset. Now you're punishing yourself for their mistakes, for their dysfunction. Their dysfunction is falling on you and now you're punishing yourself for their dysfunction. It doesn't make sense. Andrea. Okay, this conversation is like going on and on. This is really striking a chord here. sometimes we make the mistake of connecting the way we react to our emotions or others' emotions in our personalities and excuse certain behaviors with, oh, that's the way I am, when we are acting under our emotions. And that's why I think certain people don't recognize their negative emotions. Yeah, I heard a great reply to that. I'll say, someone says, that's the way I am. Say, okay, I have a question for you. Would you be willing to bet everything you own, all the money you have, your house, your car, everything you own, that statement that you just said is 100% absolutely true, that this is just the way I am, and you could never be any different than that? Would you be willing to bet everything you own on that statement being 100% true? Of course, maybe in normal life, you don't want to confront people that way, but if they were friends, you could say it nicely and say, okay, let's look at that, or just saying, look at that statement. Do you think that's 100% true? Like 100%? Like, would you bet your life that that's 100% true? And we can ask ourselves the same question when we say that. This is just the way I am. Now, sometimes when you say this is just the way I am, it is true. It's built-in hardware. That's your nature. Like you are, like right now, you'll see online, there's Satchidananda Swami is giving class, and B.B. Govinda Maharaj is giving class, and I saw Bhakti Chaitanya Swami giving class, and Indradruna Swami gives class, I think, every other day, and this one, and that one, and that one, and this one, and this, and that one, and that one, and this. Why are they doing that? I just spoke to a devotee I know, and I said, can we talk today? We had tentative appointments. He said, I'm really busy. I just been giving 4 hours of classes, and now with the lockdown, 4 hours of classes means online. So I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, anyone who's doing that, this is my third class today, for example. So my classes are an hour and a half, so we're at 4.5 hours today. And someone might say, aren't you tired, or don't you get bored doing this? And I say, if I didn't have the nature of a teacher, yes, I would probably get bored, especially if I didn't have the nature of the teacher. And I'm teaching 4.5 hours, and I don't even get paid 1 cent for it. Like, why would you do that? You don't even get paid. Because it's my nature, because I love it and I do it. So when we're talking about hardware nature, yeah, there are things that can't change. There's never going to be a time that I don't love teaching. It's just my nature. Or there's never going to be a time I don't love music. Or it's never going to be a time that some of you don't love art or love doing something creative or cooking. Like, that's hardware, that's your nature. But behaviors, that's more generally certain behaviors, that the kind we're talking about are conditioned, they're clay, they can be molded. To say this is just the way I am, like you're saying, may be a false analysis, and they don't realize. And if you can help somebody realize, no, that's not the way you are, that's the way you become conditioned to be. And the fact that you believe that's the way you are is why you can't change, and it's why you keep acting that way. So then you can help them. Or if that's how you think about yourself, that's how you help yourself, by saying, no, there's hardware and there's software. So when you say, this is how I am, ask yourself, is it hardware or software? Because most of the time it's going to be software. And the software can be upgraded. The hardware is just how you are. I can't change. Okay, I was born a man. I can't change. I could have a sex operation, but still, there's certain things that's how they are. That's hardware. But other things can change. I heard, quote, you cannot tell me the way that I am supposed to feel, or my feelings are my feelings. I do not care if you don't I don't care if you make me upset. Yeah. If you didn't mean to make me upset. That sounds like a marriage thing. Well, it's true. Your husband will say something and you'll get upset, and he'll say, I didn't mean to make you upset, and that makes you more upset. instead of saying, I'm sorry I made you upset. But usually what the husband will say is, you shouldn't feel that way, which is like, that's even worse than saying, I'm sorry I made you upset. Husbands, don't say that. You shouldn't feel that way. It's like the wife saying to the husband, you're not hungry. I'm hungry. You're not hungry. I feel this way. You shouldn't feel that way. That's the wrong way to feel. Don't say it. Any exercises on healing, changing our triggers? I'll let you meditate it. First, you have to know what your triggers are, and then start meditating on those triggers. And I'll ask you the question. You tell me how to do it. See what you come up with, because I think you will come up with answers. These kinds of arguments. Well, you understand that your husband's intent, you understand his intention, and then he has to understand how to express himself in a way that doesn't hurt you, because the way you respond emotionally is not the way he as a man would respond. So he has to understand you, and you have to understand him. And then the more you understand one another, then you can understand your intentions and emotions behind it. It's a matter, it's like a matter of learning. It's kind of like your husband cooks for you, right? And he makes something, and what he makes he loves, and then you say, sorry, Prabhu, I don't like this. You don't like that? What's wrong with you? This is my favorite. Everybody likes this. Why don't you like it? What's wrong? How would you feel? You'd feel like, you think there's something wrong with me because I don't like this? I don't like carrots? Yeah, everybody likes carrots. I never met a person who didn't. I can't believe you don't like carrots. Like, carrots are so good and they're so healthy. How could you not like carrots? Like, what's wrong with you? So that just replace carrots with feelings. So that's the man mentality. How could you feel that way? I never met anybody who felt that way. What's wrong with you? Nobody feels like that. He's basically saying, I never feel that way. My buddies don't feel that way. And now he's living with a woman who doesn't like carrots, and he's like, he can't figure it out. So that's what men have to learn. And women have to learn how to say, I don't like carrots. They have to say, honey, thank you so much for cooking. This is amazing. I am so grateful. You are the best. I guess I never told you that actually I don't like carrots. I know that sounds crazy, and I probably am crazy, but I just don't like carrots. So when you say it that way, he'll say, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know that, right? Honey, you're the best, blah, blah, blah. But when you say this, it makes me feel this way, and I know it's not your fault, and, it's something with me, but if you could say it this way, that would be better for me. Then everything's fine. So that's just some little insider information, how to talk if you're married. You need healthy self-esteem to be able to really accept the feedback. That's definitely true. Otherwise, you take it personally. Your series of classes on self-envy go into this really well, so you can look those up on SoundCloud. You said that in order to become humble, we need to have healthy self-esteem. Totally. Meg Vinyasa liked my answer. Charles Stone looks like Raphael in disguise. So we're going to bypass that, Raphael. Sorry, but it's late, so I want to end class. If you want to send donations, you should go to my website, mahatmadas.com. I don't know if there's a way on Facebook to send donations. Is there a way on Facebook? Like, end of the class, you just go bang, bang, bang. Carla, Chitra Devi, I know you didn't like carrots because I know everything. That just proves that I know everything. Is there a way to give donations on Facebook? Does anyone know? Like the end of the class? Sundari Radha will put a link. But just for your information, on mahatmadas.com, there should be a menu that says donate, and then you can donate by PayPal, or you can do a bank transfer or like that. So, donations are appreciated, especially now because I'm not traveling. You have to set it up. So we'll look into setting it up on Facebook, and then at the end of every class, I can say, and if you like this class, hit the and you want more, hit the notification, sign up to subscribe, and then hit the donate button. If you like this class, hit the donate button. Yeah. I was listening to this lecture, and Prabhupada was describing how the different ashrams, the different, varnas make money. And it was so interesting. And he said, the Brahmin will never ask for money. He'll never work for a salary. He works, he gives, he serves. And the people, he said that the way it works, we don't have this in society today. If you're a teacher, you get a salary. He said, but the way it works is the people realize the value of Brahmins and the need of Brahmins, and they realize he has to live, and if we don't support him, he can't do his service, and his service is so valuable. So he said, naturally, they would support him. So that's our culture. Support your teachers. Guru Dakshin, your teachers, you appreciate the value and you support them. And then that helps them live, stay alive. They need to eat so they can teach you and teach your friends and family and children. Yeah. So we'll figure out how to do something on Facebook for donations. That's a good idea. And we're also contemplating setting up a special members place where there's content only for members, so that way I can support myself without having to travel so much, and support the preaching, and support other devotees who help me so that we can put out more content. So that's something we're thinking about also. That could be interesting, special content. You become a member of this site, and then there's content there that you don't get otherwise, to encourage people to help. And that way, as they help, we can put out more content. We can do more help we get financially, the more we can put out, because there's more people I can, when I ask devotees to help, they do a little bit, but some devotees say, well, I need to eat also, just like everyone else. Can you help? Can you pay? Patreon, yeah. So Jesse says, do Patreon. It's a great way to do it, yeah. So we're thinking about it. So we've got one thumbs up from Jesse for Patreon, yeah. So we put special content. I have lots of content that has never gone out anywhere off my computer, and I can create more. So we can put up special content for members, and that becomes an impetus. And that's a very structured way for people who appreciate what I'm doing, then they can say, oh, I can support you. So we'll think about that. Thank you very much. And tomorrow we have our regular class at 8 tomorrow, practicing to leaving your body. And at 10:30, so that'll be an hour after class ends, we're going to do a kirtan and a little class. And this is on a site called Kirtan Mela Juhu, or Mumbai or something. We'll advertise it. I think I gave the information to Radhapriya, so we'll advertise it. So it'll be 10:30 tomorrow morning. That's 1 hour after class ends, morning class. If you want to attend that, there'll be kirtan and a little talk. So that'll be nice, to kirtan. Okay, Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you for coming. We will see you tomorrow, hopefully, if possible. Hare Krishna.